Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. St Swithins Day brought a deluge to parts of the United Kingdom. So, does that mean that we can expect 40 days of non-stop rain? Let's take a look. And as usual, I'm going to begin with the view across Europe and the North Atlantic. The animation runs from 18 GMT, Tuesday the 16th. At the outset, it's quite a mixed picture for some heavy showers in central areas, but indications that a ridge of high pressure will be building up from the southwest. And indeed it does. As I run the sequence, we see drier and warmer conditions developing across much of the UK, although it stays changeable in the northwest. Then as we head through the weekend, it looks like the Atlantic will be returning cooler, more changeable weather pushing back in from the west. But as I'll show you a little bit later, there is uncertainty about the exact timing of that transition. Just running this through to conclusion though, what we see is that the Azores high pressure has more influence in the south at times. All in all though, it's quite changeable through the second half of the first week, often wettest in the west and the northwest. So lots taking place. Here's the upper air temperature and jet stream sequence. At the start we can see the UK there, just really on the northern side of a fairly weak and disorganised jet. And as I run it, the jet actually migrates northwards and allows that much warmer air for a time into parts of the UK. But later on it strengthens and the profile across the North Atlantic flattens out. The jet stream hits the UK again with a vengeance, and that brings back changeable conditions, areas of low pressure being steered by it. If all that's correct, what sort of conditions can we expect down the surface? A few charts to illustrate. Wednesday the 17th, it's mostly dry and pleasantly warm, especially in the south and southeast where temperatures could reach 23 Celsius. Cooler as you head into Scotland and Northern Ireland. Forwards to a Friday, and it's warmer at this point. In fact, it's very warm in the southeast, even possibly hot. Maximums here 28, but some of the other computer models are going a bit higher than that, as I'll show in a moment. In the northwest though, it's already turning cooler and more changeable, showers or longer spells of rain. And by Saturday, temperatures are starting to dip in the southeast, 25 here, and it's particularly cool there in the west and the northwest with the showery conditions. And by Sunday, it's even quite cool now in the southeast, maximums there of around 19. The chance of showers mostly in the west and the north, or longer spells of rain even. Central and eastern counties drier, as I say, but cooler by now. But there is some uncertainty about the transition back to those cooler conditions. The charts here show that. The one on the left is from the GFS, so the run which the sequence was based on. On the right, it's the UK Met Office Global. They're both valid at midday on Saturday. The Met Office Global model keeping that much warmer air in place over central and eastern parts of Britain especially. But the GFS has it shoved away into continental Europe. Values in the southeast are about 5 Celsius lower on the GFS than they are on the UK Met. And that has a big impact on the temperatures down at ground level, because GFS was showing 25s on Saturday, but if the UK Met's correct, what we see is 30 Celsius, 31 on Friday, and then on Saturday, 30 to 32 maximums in central and eastern parts of England. So it's all down to the timing. If you're planning a barbecue on Saturday and you're in central and eastern England, you may end up with very warm or even hot conditions. You may not. It should probably be quite dry though. That's what both of those model runs are indicating. So fingers crossed, but keep up to date with the short range forecasts, because this just really throws a cog into the wheel, into the spokes. It's generated using data from the ECM model, considered to be the best of them all, valid 03 GMT on Sunday, and it's making more of a feature out of that area of low pressure which is moving in from the Atlantic. So if it's correct, showers are longer, outbreaks of rain developing more widely across all areas as the cooler changeable conditions return from the Atlantic. Now, in general terms, here are the rainfall aggregates for days 0 to 5 from the ECM and GFS runs. Wettest there in central parts of Britain, eastern England, so Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, and I think a lot of that rain is to do with the initial area of low pressure which is pulling away through Tuesday. But the differences other than that are really in the northwest. Northern Ireland is wetter according to the ECM model run than the GFS, and western parts of Britain in general. So for some differences there, all in all, the distribution, though fairly similar between them. Rainfall totals in the south to southeast staying low at this point. Moving forwards to the 0 to 10 day chart, so we're adding on days 5 to 10 to the aggregates here. Wettest in the west, the northwest especially, but the ECM model has higher rain totals in the southeast than the GFS does, and I think there are some differences there as we go forwards, and I'll be looking at those through week 2. GFS tending to keep pressure higher in the south than the ECM and ECM ensemble, but I'll come back to that. Now, towards the end of the first week, how do the deterministic models compare with each other? Here's the GFS, Tuesday the 23rd, high pressure at this point just ridging up from the Azores, but it's a changeable theme in general, nonetheless drier in the south and the southwest especially. A greater risk of rain at this point in the north and the northeast. The Canadian model, similar pattern. The German icon, also not really very different. The European ECM, though, as I've already hinted, making more out of this area of low pressure on Sunday and then through the early part of next week, so a greater risk there of showers or longer spells of rain, especially in central and northern areas, but not exclusively so. Finally, the UK Met Office Global. This has the high pressure building up from the Azores, so probably driest there in the southwest. The greatest risk of rain in the northeast, close to that area of low pressure. Taking them all together, there are some differences there, significant differences in terms of the weather which would be produced down at the surface. But the broad scale suggestion is for high pressure to be building up from the southwest, from the Azores, having more influence in the south and the west of the UK, low pressure close to the northeast, bringing the chance of showers or long spells of rain to the northeast. Temperatures probably not that far from the average all in all. So quite a mixed end to the first week. Does that continue to be the case as we go through week 2? As ever, just the trends and the probabilities of this range, really using the ensemble data. Here's the 16-day GEFS plot for London. 850 HPA temperatures across the top there, close to the average. Of course, there is some fluctuation with the individual runs going above and below it as we go through the course of the second week, but all in all, the thick purple line, the ensemble mean, is staying very close to the thick black line, the 30-year norm. With that said, at this time of the year, of course, the average means that it would be pleasantly warm down at the surface, all other things considered. And in terms of rain, well, there are some spikes which show up through the second week, but it's quite a dry picture if this is right. And I'm a little bit cautious about it. I'll mention why towards the end. In terms of the 2 meter temperature data tables, these oranges, pinks, pinky oranges, reds showing up there. 21 to 25, the reds 26 to 30 in a minority, although on some days pushing up to around 25 to 40% of runs going for those values. So there is a chance of it being warm or very warm at times, but a lot of runs are fairly average. Nighttime lows across the bottom, some orange there quite a lot as we go through the second half of the second week. Those are overnight lows of between 16 and 20. We're at the time of the year when it can be particularly muggy and rather unpleasant for sleeping in the south and the southeast of the UK. Up to Manchester, I'll not spend too much time on the top half of the plot since it's very similar to London. There are more rain spikes, I think, showing up across the bottom, just indicating the message that it's more likely to be changeable, greater risk of rain in the west, the northwest. 2-meter temperature data table, overnight lows and daytime highs, both a little bit down on the London values. There is something of a signal here though for it to be turning warmer towards the end of the second week. Glasgow, there is a difference because most runs here are below the 30-year norm, and also there are more rain spikes there across the bottom, an ongoing risk of rain, possibly quite wet. Certainly the suggestion from this is there'll be a strong Atlantic influence, quite a lot of cloud showers or longer spells of rain through the second week. So that's also reflected by the 2-meter temperature data table, lower than Manchester through the day and through the night, rather cool on some nights there, down into single figures, and a few of runs, just 1 or 2, going for lows of between 1 and 5 Celsius. Most, though, the vast majority between 6 and 10 overnight lows. Here are the rainfall probability charts from the ECM model. They show the greatest chance of 5 millimetres or more of rainfall on the first 3 days of the second week to be in the west and the northwest of the UK. The orange shading indicating around 60%, significantly lower as you head southwards and eastwards. With that said, it doesn't look like a completely settled pattern, and that message is backed up by the following 3 days. The same sort of percentage distribution, wettest in the northwest, the greatest chance of it being wet in the northwest at least, but there could well be some rain around in the south and the east if these forecast charts are on the ball. The GEFS 10-day mean surface level pressure plot though actually looks quite promising for the southern half UK. This is generated by averaging out all of the individual runs, and high pressure building quite strongly really northeastwards towards the UK from the Azores, certainly having influence there in southern and central regions, so drier conditions likely to develop through much of this period if it is correct. But the European ensemble mean surface level pressure plot at the same time has more of an Atlantic influence across all parts of the UK. The Azores high pressure centred closer to the Azores, building less strongly towards the United Kingdom, so it paints a more changeable scenario from the GEFS. Hence there is a lot of uncertainty. And the ECM deterministic model run for Friday the 26th of July, I'm just using this because it's only a snapshot, but it backs up the general theme from the ensemble, looks quite mixed. The Azores high pressure there building maybe northwards in the Atlantic rather than northeastwards towards the UK. Showers or longer spells of rain, particularly there in the north and maybe the east. So a changeable pattern being highlighted by the ECM deterministic run. So quite mixed, taking all of that data together. GEFS may be more promising than the ECM deterministic and the ECM ensemble for the southern half of the UK, if of course it's dry and settled weather, which you're hoping for, because I know not everybody wants that. So to summarise, week 1, rain mostly in the northwest through the first part of the week, drier in the south and the east, and temperatures will be climbing. By Friday it becomes very warm in central and eastern parts of England. 30 Celsius is not out of the question. Those high temperatures may continue in central and eastern England on Saturday, but through the weekend it will be turning cooler and more changeable once more as the Atlantic begins to return. Week 2, changeable, particularly in the north, the northwest. Dry periods most frequent in the south, but even there some rain is still very possible. Temperatures, well, quite warm at times in the south. There is a chance of warm or even very warm days. In the north, often close to the average. But as it says in the brackets there, other outcomes are very possible. Confidence continues to be low or even a very low. So, there we have it, a mixed outlook. Driest in the south and the east, wettest in the west and the northwest, but as I've been saying, confidence is low, and as we've seen in recent days, if we get an area of low pressure moving up from the southwest, it does bring the potential for relatively short but torrential downpours to affect southern parts of the UK. So even there could be some high rain totals. It's not been signalled by the models, but they tend not to be very good at picking up that type of development more than a few days ahead. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then as ever, please consider hitting the like button below, and of course, subscribing to the channel if you've not done so already. And stay up to date with the day-to-day weather developments by checking out the TheWeatherOutlook.com website. Thanks very much now. Bye.